I'm Dagny Forrest, a member of the editorial and podcast teams here at Painted Bride Quarterly. Slushies, we have another reissue for you from seasons past. Episode 27, Suicides and Skeleton Jazz, was devoted to 2 poems by Rita Banerjee. Rita was recently appointed director of the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College, where our own Jason Schneiderman is part of the teaching faculty. You can read her fully updated bio in the show notes. Incidentally, in this episode, our Jason is exceptionally quiet, an unusual hiccup in our usually high recording quality. I hope you'll enjoy this episode as much as I did, captivated by moments like this one from Banerjee's The Suicide Rag. As we fell, face forward, hands locked and stiff, the only thing that could have come between us was a kiss.
Welcome to Painted Bride Quarterly Slush Pile. Once again, we're doing something new and different. We're in my office. We've never been in my office before, but we're hoping that because it's smaller, that when we talk into the black ravioli, which is also known as the microphone, it'll be even better. So we'll see. So in my office is me. I'm Kathleen Volk, and I run the graduate program in publishing here, and I publish essays mostly. And on my right is Sara Aykit, who is our fabulous current editorial co-op.
Fabulous, yes, that's me. No, I'm Sara Aykit, and I'm a third-year English major here at Drexel. And like Kathy said, I am the current editorial assistant for PBQ.
And she got her first publication 2 days ago.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't ask her permission to tell you that. Woohoo!
Yay, Sara. That's great, Sara.
Yeah. Okay. And on my couch is
Tim Fitz, and I've been teaching here at Drexel for a few years. And I've been reading with the Painted Bride Quarterly for a little over 3 years now, about 3.5 years. And I'm the author of the Soju Club, which is translated into Korean and available mostly in South Korea, and a short story collection to come out this spring with Mad Hat Press called Hypothermia. And did you introduce yourself?
I did already.
I had the flu last week, and my brain is still a little bit porous. And there's a chance I haven't had the coughing jag yet, the big one, in the last few days, but it may happen.
Oh, I have some special herbal things. Let me grab them and have them at the ready. Yeah. So Tim's brain is a little bit on the tasty cake side of things. But we still have our core 4 to introduce. So I guess let's stay in the country and go to New York next.
Hi, it's Jason Schneiderman. I am in my office in lovely Tribeca. I don't have a window, so I have no idea what the weather is like.
Cold.
I want a window. Was that clear? I'd like a window in my office. I'd have to move offices. You can't. There's no it's not like I could just break through and create a window.
Me either. I would just be in another hallway.
Right. I'm just saying I want a window.
Okay. Marion is surrounded by windows, I think. Are you in your apartment that is filled with windows?
I am surrounded. True. This is true. This is Marion Wrenn. I'm calling in from NYU in Abu Dhabi, where I direct the writing program here. And it is, what time is it? About 8:15. It's pitch black outside. I'm looking at the city of Abu Dhabi slightly off in the distance. And I don't know if I've ever explained it this way, but the NYU campus is a little bit like a cruise ship parked in Queens. If you live in Manhattan and can imagine Queens in relationship to Manhattan, the campus is just like a little outside the city and parked on a lovely island. So that's the image I want you to think about tonight, that it's pitch dark and I'm on a cruise ship parked in Queens.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I feel like I can picture it so well because I've Skyped with you so often and you've given me tours on the computer.
I have.
Kind of like, yeah, and it's sort of like, I would call it what you said, but then also outer space.
Yes, we do like call it the spaceship, which is, by the way, Arabic for happiness. So I technically live on Happiness Island. So
There you
there's
go.
that.
Well, that's a good place to live.
Yes, dear Donald Trump, greetings from Happiness Island.
Maybe we could move him there.
Yes, thank you. No.
Okay, so today we have 2 poems by Rita Banerjee, and we're so honored and excited to read her work. And I guess we're going to start with The Suicide Rag, and I'm wondering who would like to read that for us.
I nominate Tim.
Tim? Okay.
Tim.
The Suicide Rag. Billy played ragtime on the church organ, but we'd lunch our kids kept time by another name. Behind St. Augustine's, we learned to hit the pavement, sound like an anvil crack, hammers hitting steel. Billy playing skeletons on the 5th, we arpeggioed, haloed, froze on the blacktop, learning to cakewalk. This was our battle. Tarmac babies doing hand-sprung suicides for the girls standing around with knife-like eyes. That's all we needed, a rolling beat, firing squad and schoolyard skirts. Scouring the lot as we fell face forward, hands locked and stiff. The only thing that could have come between us was a kiss.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Tim. I didn't say this before, so I'll say it now. You can find this poem, listeners, on our podcast pages. I don't know what episode this will be, but somewhere in the 20s. You should find it easily. Looking for Rita Banerjee, if you would like to read along. So this is a long and skinny poem, and I think that's what made me remember that we should have talked about it visually on the page. The lines are almost all about 3 words, and the stanzas are 3-line stanzas. So it's long and skinny, short riffs, dare I snap my fingers and say that?
This poem for me changed dramatically between when I read it the other day in my head and reading it out loud.
Yeah?
Yeah, I liked it a lot more reading it out loud.
Well,
It's
there
very
you go.
rhythmic.
Yeah.
It has a natural, perpetual motion to it.
Yeah, and from like a fiction point of view, where I don't have the same type of surgical, poetic eye like Jason does, when I read this, I love how the lines jump from one stanza to the next.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I was thinking they were going to stop between each stanza, but then they kind of leapfrog each other and really pull you along.
It has to be staccato with it.
What's that?
It recreates kind of a touch and go child's play, kind of like the rhythms of tag or the rhythms of jump rope, where something's kind of moving very quickly and then stopping and then restarting.
Yeah.
What is skeletons? I don't know what that is. Billy playing skeletons. Is that still the music, or is that a schoolyard game? What's the schoolyard game? I'm trying for that.
You know what? I pictured like in cartoons when people play skeleton bones, and they're like getting xylophone.
Well, it's funny that you say that too. Like I don't know if that's a reference to like a musical move or a dance move, but it says Billy playing skeletons on the 5th. So it must be like something that he's doing on the keyboards of that organ. And it sort of echoes with or resonates with doing suicides. And so it's called Suicide Rag. And can you all help me with this? Like I think of suicide in breakdancing is when the dancer sort of like falls on their back, right? So doing hand-sprung suicides means like that breakdance move of like being like totally horizontal, like flipping back horizontal and then jumping back up, right? Am I right about that?
I think you are.
Okay.
According to Wikipedia, as a b-boy move, the suicide is a
I love that Wikipedia just confirmed my 1980s deep reference. Hip-hop, lived hip-hop.
Sure. And skeleton jazz is a term. So that's a real thing too. So it all works.
Okay.
I would guess my hunch is it would be sort of like staccato arpeggios, something like that, where you a lot of short staccato notes. That's my guess.
Well, I like the parallelism between Billy playing ragtime on the church organ, and like that alone, playing ragtime on the church organ, and the kids with the kind of music they're playing to in their minds on the lunch hour playground. I love like the parallel between those a lot. You know, you can see it so well. The girls in their schoolyard skirts, you know.
Catholic kids being bad.
Sure.
And then the suggestion of sex at the end, right? The only thing that could have come between us was a kiss. That like all of this tension is basically building up to something erotic.
Right.
As it always is.
So I want to just jump in and say something that's probably not at all Rita Banerjee's intention, but is evocative for me, right? Which is when my dad was alive, he was a church organist. He was a concert organist, right? And his name was Billy, right? And so it's trippy for me to like enter into this poem. That's just total personal aside information, right? So the other thing that she actually does get right, and I don't know if this is something in her knowledge or an accident of the poem, but I can remember my dad and his friends and an uncle who actually recently passed talked about how much fun they had playing jazz on the church organ, playing jazz on the church piano, right? The sort of like the sort of risk and play of that, like you know, using the organ for like playing these like, you know, big monstrous sacred music, you know, Sunday mass tunes, right? But then also playing like the Maple Leaf Rag on that organ, and then like making the church vibrate with a different kind of music. And my mom still talks about how much she loved it, you know, when my dad would do that or my Uncle George would do that. So again, you know, Banerjee's probably not, you know, intending to rock my world in the way she does, but she does, right? So I'm in by line 4. Like, what? She's, it's a poem about organ music? What? And then I love that juxtaposition with B-boys, right? With the kids in the back on the pavement doing, you know, these sort of risky moves in their adolescence or in their teenage years, you know. A lovely combination.
In middle school, Marion?
What's that?
Were you friends with the breakdancers? Did you know the breakdancing crews?
Oh, are you kidding? I had a graffiti jacket. I was part of that whole, like, you know, cross your arms and stand tough. We would stand in circles. I couldn't dance to save my life, but I definitely had a graffiti jacket.
And your hair was really high.
It was really high, and my tagging name was Rio, R-I-O, and I used to run around the neighborhood with my friend Jeff Kaleo, and he would drive around and we would try to spray paint things, and he was really good at it, but I could never quite tag with any sort of coherence.
I think we're gonna have to bleep that out. You just named
busted, right? We're all going to graffiti jail, you know, 30 years hence.
I was watching Working Girl last night, and that hair was real. People really had that hair.
Yeah, man, that was a serious commitment.
Sorry, I've taken us out of the poem.
Yes.
Bring us back to it. Was saying, do you think? Because I feel like this scene is very familiar. Like I've seen this kind of schoolyard scene a lot in poetry. Definitely taking back like Major Jackson's work. I was just wondering, like, I mean, do you guys feel like this is like, does that familiarity, like, I mean, obviously it's resonating for Marion in this like incredibly personal way. But what just that this is like such a frequently romanticized location and setting and population and activity.
Well, the thing that is different for me is that last stanza that where the only thing that could come between us was a kiss. For me, that reminds me of the type of intimacy that you have when you play with other musicians, where it feels like Dave Mustaine, the guitar player and songwriter for Megadeth, said, when you play in a band, it's the closest you can come to people without having sex. And there is a really strange and beautiful type of intimacy you get especially when you're improvising music and everyone's bouncing ideas off each other non-verbally, just through eye contact or things you're doing with notes. That blows your mind every time you do it. And you do feel, I mean, you can go 20 years without talking to these people, and you can run into them and you catch up in a heartbeat because you've been to that place with them. And it's, for me, I like how Marion is seeing it from that angle, but I do think that the poet is commenting on, because breakdancing and all that is very similar. Everyone's bouncing ideas off each other, and they're building off of one person's moves and the other. I like that.
Yeah, and you know what, Jason? I would say everybody's going to find their own way in here. Sara might have something to say as a Catholic school girl. I went to Catholic school for a tiny bit, but I think we romanticize this scene because we know it, because we do know it. And everybody, you know, the other day I saw something where the kids were doing that, 20th Century Women. Highly recommend that film, everybody. But they did that thing where you hyperventilate and somebody squeezes you behind your, you know, on your chest.
Yeah.
And you pass out. And I remember when boys did that in school at lunchtime, and I was thinking, watching it now, like, who the hell was letting us get away with that? How were we doing that? And the you know, this poem reminds me of that too, like the risks they're taking out there on the schoolyard. That, you know, it's so funny. Like, here we are at a Catholic school. It's only lunch hour. It's not 2 a.m. We haven't snuck out of our bedrooms. You know, it's full on daylight, and we're taking every risk we can. So I dug it for that reason. I was transported right back to those kinds of risks.
You know, I wonder if that's what's so interesting about breakdancing is the risks aren't really risks, but if you fail, the social risk is high. When you do the move, because nobody looks dumber than a breakdancer who can't do a move, and or a musician who plays the wrong thing. And so you have this, or if you're at a jazz club and you sit in with the band and you mess up, I don't think you can go back to the club anymore. You can't just play. Done. So the stakes are high.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna suffer physically, but it feels in some ways worse. But it's a great place for young people to explore music and writing and breakdancing, all that stuff.
Right. So Tim, I think it was Jason a moment ago, when you were asking that question about, like, does this feel fresh, right? Like it's you know, trodden territory. Does it feel fresh, right? What is it that draws us to it? And you mentioned Major Jackson, right? I think it was you who mentioned Major. And I was thinking, like, you know, right, his great poem Blunts in the book Leaving Saturn, right, is the scene of that poem is a handful of young men standing, you know, in a doorway, smoking a blunt and, you know, making plans for the future, right? Like their aspirations, like sort of breathing into each other and standing in a circle. And, you know, this one wants to be a poet, and the friend says, oh, so you want the tongue of God, right? And then they collapse into laughter, and it's too late, they were tragically hip, right? That scene does echo this, but this one, I think, as everybody's saying, is slightly different because it is that Catholic school like setting, and the stakes are so high, right? Like, it's not just the intimacy of this group of dancers, but the group of dancers being watched and witnessed, right, by these girls, right? Or the sort of knife eyes, right? Like Tim, this is where I think you're right. It's like that performance, that risk of performance, right? Like, they're teenagers, they're dancing, it's high stakes, and if they screw up, they're not coming back to the club. You know?
Yeah.
It's almost painterly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I barely heard that, Jason.
It's communal in a way that's almost painterly, that it doesn't ever settle. Like, usually, you know, poetry will settle on a single subjectivity, or, you know, one kind of speaker or a character or persona, and this never does that. It really stays at this kind of remove in which the entire scene is sort of, it almost like makes me think of like a Richard Scarry book, or a Bosch painting, or, you know, like something where you had this really big landscape and you're watching kind of all of these characters within it.
Yeah. It never comes to a me. It stays at a we.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but Jason, I like that. It really never does sort of hone in on that, as Kathy put it, that me. So it doesn't do that sort of like POV, cinematic, over the shoulder, right, move. It really stays at a kind of landscape, picture scale, which is cool.
Well, what do you guys think? Do you think we're ready to vote?
Let's do it.
Sounds like we are. Okay. 1, 2, 3, vote.
You're gonna laugh.
Ryan, we
when
have
I tell
Ryan,
you.
our sound engineer today, so he's gonna look for Abu Dhabi in New York. It's a unanimous yes. I never reveal the score unless it's unanimous, but it's unanimous. So high five to Rita Banerjee. Yay, and yay for PBQ. So thank you.
When I said Hieronymus Bosch, I meant Peter Bruegel. Bruegel, sorry.
But you know what? The Bosch works too, right? That does. It does, right? Like if you, yeah.
Bosch is a little more like fantasy.
Right. The Bosch is a nastier reference, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I don't know if you should explain it or not, because we have one more poem to do. Okay, so Georgia Brown, who'd like to read that?
I'll go for it.
All right, Sarah.
Go ahead, Sarah. Publish, Sarah.
Oh my goodness. Georgia Brown. Harlem had yet to be born. The globe had not been spun. But we knew how to whistle, how to call clappers and skirts on cue. That summer, we first met Georgia. She was an echo and 4 beats. We learned to hum her story. Mike played her with a licked reed, but she was all brass, sharp like an abandoned railroad cutting through wild wood. And when she took stage, she made those trombone boys whisper, "Sweet Georgia, sweet."
Okay, thank you very much.
Nice reading.
So this one, as you heard, is shorter, and it's a tight, compact, maybe 14 lines, all grouped in one stanza. No stanza break. So what do we know about Georgia Brown? What do we know from this poem about Georgia Brown?
I know the song, but I don't really know that poem.
Right. So I think the poem is about the song, right? Like, am I right to assume that, right? So Mike played her with a licked reed, but she was all brass, sharp like an abandoned railroad, cutting through wild wood. And when she took stage, she made those trombone boys whisper, "Sweet Georgia, sweet." It's funny, Sarah, I stumble there too, right? It's beautiful. That line, she made those trombone boys whisper, but man, does it make you slow it down in order to speak it. So yeah, I actually think the poem is about the song, not necessarily about the person or a person named Georgia Brown. That's my guess.
I think you're right. I think it works more effectively about the song. Although it certainly personifies the song as a woman.
Absolutely. Right, because, all right, so now I'm cheating. I'm going to Google, right? So there was Georgia Brown. She's an English singer in the nice long life there, right? 1933 through 92. Georgia Brown, who's a Brazilian singer, died in, she was born in 1980. And then you got Georgia Brown, the song. But I don't know. I feel like the sort of technicalities of Wikipedia might not, be the thing to do.
I mean, I feel like you get sent to Wikipedia in part by Harlem Had Yet to Be Born. So it sort of makes you wonder, if Harlem is working as a shorthand here for Black culture and jazz and music, then you're sort of thinking like, well, when is before that, right?
Yeah.
And on all the things that we're finding about Sweet Georgia Brown would place it all in the 20s, which would be, the height of the Harlem Renaissance.
I'm right there with you, Jason. Yeah.
And so it sort of makes the Harlem Had Yet to Be Born, but I mean that can be more personal. If that doesn't have to be read historically, and that can kind of be read about them creating these musicians kind of creating their own Harlem through the music that they create. And I think that works a little more effectively. Yeah.
What do you do with the second line then, right? So Harlem had yet to be born, right? The globe had yet to be spun. So you've got this like double whammy of like time and space and place, right? But third line, that's where you get that turn. But we knew how to whistle, how to call clappers and skirts. So it's like, you know, without Harlem, we knew, or with like in the prehistory of that cultural moment, right? We knew how to do this, right? This song, this, right? And then that summer we first met Georgia. She was an echo in 4 beats, right? So it's like, you know, I'm a melon strolling on 2 tendrils, right? The sort of metaphor is doing the work of personifying the song as a person, right? Or the person as an image. So yeah, so the question I'm asking is, what about those 2 lines, right? Harlem had yet to be born, the globe had yet to be spun.
Had not been spun.
Oh yeah, sorry, had not been spun.
I like it personally, kind of being about people who haven't sort of discovered the world that they're inside of yet.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
I read it as like a transition from global to personal, like a transition from the external world, so that you as the reader know where we are in time and space, like you said, Marion, into a transition to the personal of this we, and where these few people are in their personal lives. So I read those first 2 sentences as a grounding almost.
For me, this one is not as evocative as the first one, but I don't know as much about music.
I think the music is in the poem. I mean, I think ultimately, like, I mean, Google is wonderful, but I'm still kind of a new formalist at heart. And still kind of think that everything has to be inside the poem, and obviously it can't. Obviously, like, you know, if you just got out of like a bubble, you wouldn't know what Harlem means, and obviously we all have a resonance. But I do feel like it contains enough to kind of carry us through. I mean, I love that I played her with a licked reed, but she was all brass, sharp, and railroad cutting through wild wood. I mean, in a certain way, I mean, I guess if this were from another poet, I might be suspicious of it as kind of misogynistic, that we're talking about that, you know, the changing something non-human into a woman who is then sexually inhabited and used might have resonances that I'd be disturbed by. But I think here it works really nicely.
I mean, either way, like, this poem is the word I'm looking for. In a way, it is misogynistic. I don't know. I had to look up what a clapper was, and I learned that that's another word for a stripper. So, like, this view, there is a slight misogynistic, like, tone about it. So, yeah.
Maybe I heard that.
I had to look it up.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're all on the side of strippers, though, aren't we? Like, right? Like, we're all pro stripper.
Oh, totally, yeah. But there is this this view of women. This I
thought those were like the clappers were the dancers in the fringe dresses.
Yeah, but
not strippers.
So
I thought those were flappers.
Oh.
that's what you mean.
And I thought clappers were inside of a bell, right? Aren't those clappers, right?
I thought clapper was a thing you buy to shut your lamps off.
Yeah, so there's also a very controversial that you could never get away from.
Yeah, but wait, Sara, man, that really changed. Look at that. But we knew how to whistle, how to call clappers and skirts on cue.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
if clappers referring to like strippers and skirts, that's just another way of sort of like objectifying a woman, right? That's interesting, right?
I think objectifying is the word I want, but I think stripper is the wrong word, but basically, like, to clap is an erotic dance. So someone who, so it's clapping is a form of erotic dance. So a clapper is someone who performs that. So, but yeah, like, with that knowledge, the rest of the poem, the tone of the poem changes.
All right, well, I got to go deep Google and figure out this erotic clapping dance.
You know that
Not now.
Now, I don't know if I can articulate.
I'll be back. Give me a
Not
minute.
now.
I don't know if I can articulate exactly why, but it seemed the first poem seems to me as if it was written by someone who has experienced dancing or playing music or has lived this life.
Mm-hmm.
The second one does not read like a musician or a dancer.
Hmm.
I don't know what, for me, that doesn't necessarily make it good or bad. It's just that I feel like it's written by someone on the outside of the music world, someone on the outside looking in and playing that role. So it doesn't, to me, seem quite as genuine. And I'm not sure, looking through what words are doing that. Maybe it's the licked reed kind of exoticizes music in a way, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just creates a little space between the poem and I think what she might be trying to get at. So I guess that's, it doesn't shine for me like it does on the page in my mind, if that makes sense.
I agree with you, Tim.
Well, it's funny. I keep thinking about these clappers, right? Because when I first read it, I just took them as like castanets, right? Like those little like clickety clackety things, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny like that the conversation spun around that word as much as it did, because it's like now I can't unhear it in the same way that because it's called Georgia Brown and the last line is sweet, Georgia's sweet. Like it is really hard to read this poem and not have the song Sweet Georgia Brown so loud in your ears, right? That you can actually dial it back, dial the volume down low enough that you can read the poem here, right? Like it feels like it's sort of like over determined around the title of the song or the lyrics of that song a little bit. And I wonder if that contributes to what you're expressing, Tim, like the way it lacks the sort of edgy shininess, right? That you're looking for. But I have to say, like, even so, I kind of dig it, right? Like, even though the song is so like tuned up for me, I do like what she's got happening in these images.
I think I kind of feel like that's the strength of the poem, that it really does kind of call on like a cultural, a shared cultural knowledge. But also, I mean, for most people, and I would say of like our generation, Sweet Georgia Brown is kind of an oldie, right? That it's sort of like hard to imagine how sexual jazz was in the 1920s and 30s, because it's, we've grown up on like these tamed Muzak versions, and even the slang, like boogie woogie refers to tertiary syphilis, right? That's and, a lot, like Jelly Roll is slang for vagina, right? Like, and all of these songs by Jelly Roll Morton. And we've lost, I mean, jazz itself means to have sex. I'm not using the F word because we're podcasting, but so I mean, I feel like there's a way in which, like, the fact that we all know this song, but we know this song in like a very tame version that we might sing along in the car with our family, and the poem is kind of re-inscribing that with like the incredibly transgressive sexuality that it would have had in its origin. I think it's kind of the power of the poem.
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing about those words and the music, is that when it's not overt, then you get to all those places on your own terms. So you can listen to it when you're 9 and you're just listening to jazz. But when you're listening to it when you're older, you're listening to jazz, and they're two different things.
Well, listen, I appreciate the distinction, right? Because I grew up listening to Sweet Georgia Brown as a Harlem Globetrotters song, right? Like it is absolutely tied to a kind of like comedy, right? Athletic comedy, right? The glory of the Harlem Globetrotters, right? And not the Ella Fitzgerald version. Like the Ella Fitzgerald version is only something that, like, as an adult, I came to understand, right? Which is, I mean, that's just a totally different scale of this song, right?
Harlem had yet to be spun. The Globe had not been spun. I'm realizing now that Harlem Globetrotters is in there.
It's right there.
But I was going to say that it's a lot like, it's like when I take my nephew to see Jackson Pollock, and when we go to look at Pollock, everyone knows, children know how to look at a Jackson Pollock because it's in a museum and they're told, like, okay, this is good. That's really different from looking at it in like the 1940s or 50s when you're like, what is that? Right? And I really think that I do want to kind of keep making the argument for this poem as kind of reminding us of how shocking that work was in the moment, even though it's become tamed and accessible in ways that it couldn't have been in that time.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. I think you just turned my head.
Okay, that sounds like a cue.
Huh. Okay. Harlem had yet to be born. The globe had not been spun. That's good. That's good.
Shall we vote?
We shall.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, vote. Okie dokie, it's in.
Yay, Rita Banerjee.
Yeah. 2 for 2 today. I always love that. Yeah, so exciting. Thank you, Rita. And you can find these poems again on our pages on PBQ's site. You can comment on what you have to think about them, and clappers and all of this on our Facebook event page that corresponds to this episode. So, you know, the thing about never knowing when we're gonna drop these means that we can't be that topical. But I will say that I'm excited about AWP, and I'm sure we'll refer back to it at some point on an episode. We will be co-hosting a literary death match at the Black Cat in Washington.
Oh my God, the Black Cat?
Yes.
I used to go there in college.
Well, what else is kind of amazing is that that's where Marion and I attended our first literary death match and said, we got to get in on this.
We got to get us one of those.
Yeah, so we've held several in Philly and at, I think, pretty much every AWP since. So excited for that as well. So I'm sure we'll report at some point on our site and on the show. Does anybody else have anything to say? I guess I did love 20th Century Women.
Haven't seen it yet.
Oh, run there in the Happiness Island. Got to be showing somewhere.
I would say that it's important to watch Flora Foster Jenkins.
Yes.
Who laughed and cried in such close proximity. And Meryl Streep is not overrated.
I was lucky enough to see that as a play on Broadway, and it was a miracle to see that live. This was like a decade ago. It really was amazing.
That's super cool. Cool. Yeah, I hated the movie Boyhood, the movie that everybody loved, and I hated it. I could spend a whole episode telling you why it sucks. But 20th Century Women was kind of like the answer for me of a much better version of the same kind of ideas. So yes, I'm Meryl Streep. You got anything, Tim?
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a librarian. We were talking about ways to promote books published by small presses who don't normally get on the bookshelf. And he said that you should go to your public library, you should get a free membership, go to the library and give them a short list of 3 or 4 books from small presses that you would like them to carry. And he said they will almost always carry it. So every few months, go down to your library with a short list of books on presses where you like authors, or just
or specific authors.
Yeah. And they'll buy them. And if everyone's doing that regularly, that'll give them enough juice to keep publishing writers. And we got to start working from the ground up, because we know it's not going from the top down anymore. We know that in all our major industries, right? Politics, education, publishing, we got to take on the responsibility ourselves. And this is a really easy way that you can support them without anybody spending any money. They've got the money to spend. They have to spend it or they're going to lose it. Give them a list of books and they'll do it. So
I love that idea.
Tell all your students and all the listeners.
I wonder if there is like, is there a hashtag for this? Like, is there an organization that promotes this? We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Small press library movement, right?
Yeah.
If there isn't one, we'll start it.
I'm sure Sara knows how to do it.
Right.
Because her people know all things tech.
My people,
her people, her millennials.
My people will figure this out.
Sara, tell us about the literary magazine that you were publishing, because it's kind of interesting. Just the name and what it's about.
So the title of the magazine is The Cadaverine. It's UK-based, and they only publish authors under 30. So they sell 25 columns. It's titled Pointless. And so, yeah, they're mostly online. So a little small, but really cool.
Yeah. When they actually put our poem up, we'll put it on our news feed. So watch for it. We'll do a bit of social media when it's up. So speaking of social media, we're on all platforms. Follow us, easy to find. And visit our page and keep reading. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. God bless the public library.